Okay, welcome back to Talkin Knicks. I'm Tom Piccolo, recording this on Sunday evening, just moments after New York beat the Cleveland Cavaliers at MSG by a score of 92 to 81. It snapped a 5-game home losing streak at Madison Square Garden. That was nice. It was a very ugly game, but the Knicks are now 11 and 13. We're going to talk about that game and kind of the up and down week that led up to it. We'll try and do some big picture stuff too. So let's do it. Let's talk Knicks. All right, and before I introduce my co-hosts, I want to remind those of you listening that we are now on YouTube. So we're posting like full shows, full podcasts there, as well as some highlights from episodes and also like video breakdowns. So kind of like video clips, highlights, stuff like that. So definitely check that out. And YouTube. It's kind of fun. You could look at our faces if you want. Today, I'm joined by the brothers Poon, Greg, and Kenny. Ken, I'll start with you. How you doing?
Doing well, Tom. Doing well. It's been a busy weekend. I guess yesterday was a lot of sports. We watched the U.S. team lost in the World Cup. They went home. That was sad for me. And then I watched the Villanova Wildcats. They got Cam Whitmore back, who's a projected top 5 pick. So I'm sure we'll be talking about him around draft time, but he came back and Villanova got a much needed win. And then I feel like I watched more basketball yesterday. Yeah, the Knicks played yesterday and today. So it's just been a lot of sports for me, sports watching for me. What have you guys been up to?
GP, what's new with you?
Not much. Had a fun little weekend. Went up to Boston for her birthday. Celebrated. Went to a casino. Lost $60. The good times. My friends won though.
You were the only one who lost?
Yeah, so me and my friend Matt, who you've all met, lost $61 and $68 respectively. Then the other people won like $40, $250, and $600 respectively.
$600.
The big ballers were playing craps. The rest of us were just sitting on video roulette and blackjack machines.
Video roulette. Okay, I was going to ask what your game of choice was.
Well, I like to do actual roulette, but they had like a $25 minimum, so you had to bet $25 every hand or every spin. And so, I started out and lost all my money immediately, and then I left.
Yeah,
all my money being $60.
Right. If you're cutting yourself off at 60, then those $25 buy-ins will be a quick night at the casino.
That does remind me. I think we all took a trip together several years ago to Puerto Rico and hit the roulette table, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's my game of choice.
Yeah, I think Tom walked out the big loser that night.
Yeah, what else is new? That's why I don't gamble. But I'm not opposed to it. I've never been successful with it, so yeah, no real reason.
I think the thing about gambling is like I treat it as a cost. Like I'm going to pay $50 to go have fun for the night, and then that's my limit. And if I come out ahead of that, that's great, but usually it doesn't work that way. So I don't gamble that much.
Yeah, I mean, my weekend was pretty chill. I mean, yesterday was like rainy all day. We decorated for Christmas, put up the tree, the ornaments, did all that stuff, but nothing. We went to the park, had a nice walk. Nothing crazy over here. Kind of the biggest stuff I'll have to save for what else is on. So with that, we can get to a quick recap of the games. I don't want to linger too long on some of these. First game of the week, Knicks beat the Pistons 140 to 110 in Detroit. Yeah, not a whole lot notable. This is a Detroit team that we knew was bad. Julius Randle was very good in this one. But I don't know that we really learned anything about this team. Did anything stand out to you guys in this game?
It was Randall's birthday. He had a very good game on his birthday, so good for him.
Yeah, I think he had those 6 threes. They may have all been in the first quarter. All right, maybe he was at least 5 in the first quarter. So I don't that 6th one may have come in the second quarter. But yeah, he was just Knicks are good if Randall makes every single shot. I think that was my main takeaway. He was the only one person who had over 16 points. So
Yeah, and we've seen
Not
that
much.
that movie before with the We Here season when Julius Randle made every shot and the Knicks were good. So that was a little throwback there. The next game was against the Bucks. The Knicks lost at home 103-109 to Milwaukee. And, it was really hard to find much fault in this one on the Knicks side. Like, they played a really good game. It came down to a couple Grayson Allen DHOs at the end, that 3-pointer that Grayson Allen hit to kind of to win the game. I don't want to. I guess RJ went under the screen, and like that led to the Grayson Allen 3. It was still a good contest. I'm not too worried about that. And then RJ then took a 3 on the other end. Some fans were a little upset. They thought that was a bad shot, not in rhythm. But again, this was not a game that got me upset. This was a well played game, and one of the better games the Knicks played this season, frankly. And so to lose against simply a better team didn't bother me. What did you guys think of this one?
I think you hit the nail on the head, and I think from the stat sheet, I think this is one of the games. I think this is the only game I haven't watched this season, but from the stat sheet and from everything that I've seen, like it looks like a good game from RJ. He looks like offensively he might have been the best player on the Knicks, but I will defer to you guys on that because I know sometimes RJ's stat sheets have been deceiving. The other thing I heard a lot about was Mitchell Robinson's defense, particularly on Giannis, and I think he also dominated on the boards. So he was another standout in that game from what I've heard.
Yeah, just real quick on that. I mean, I think Mitchell Robinson probably was the headliner in this one. Like, he finished with the 15 points, the 20 boards, 11 of which were on the offensive end. And, I feel like in past games against stretch fives, and Brook Lopez is now definitely a stretch 5. Mitch has struggled, but he really protected the paint in this one. And you mentioned his defense against Giannis. Giannis still ended the game with 37 points, 13 boards, 7 assists. Like, Giannis is just a straight up monster. He also got to the line 12 times and was actually making his free throws. Like, that was a big reason why Milwaukee was able to pull this one out. Giannis doesn't usually hit 75% from the free throw line. But Mitchell Robinson, this was one of his best, probably his best game of the season, frankly. And then to your point, also good to see RJ finish this one. He got to the line 9 times, finished 8 of 9 from the free throw line too. So that was awesome. He finished with 26 points, just a couple boards, 3 assists, but it was that scoring, the efficiency from the field that has been very elusive for him so far. So that was nice. Greg, did you catch this one or have anything to add to the Bucks game?
I did not catch it. We saw at the very beginning of the game, Jalen Brunson looked to sprain his ankle, and we were all worried the season was over right then and there. So that's how much Jalen Brunson means to this team when that's how we're feeling after a sprained ankle. So.
Yeah, and he didn't really look the same after that either. And he'd been dealing with some like quad stuff. He finished this game 8 of 22 from the field. That's very unlike him. He still had the 5 assists to 1 turnover ratio, which is nice. But to be that inefficient is, clearly something was hindering him. But and I kind of carried over to the Mavs game. I want to say he also struggled from the field in that. Well, I'm looking at the box score now, and he was just okay. But that we could move on to the Dallas game, which I think was the most maybe controversial, or I don't know, it incited the most vitriol from Knicks fans, which is funny because that first quarter, the Knicks came out. Dallas came out really weak and slow, but the Knicks came out to a 32-20 first quarter lead, and they looked great. They were moving the ball. I was really happy with how they were playing. And then the second quarter, they kind of started to let Dallas creep back in. And then the third quarter was just, it's probably the worst quarter of the season, maybe even of the Tibbs era. Dallas outscored New York 41-15 in that third quarter. The stat that was going around, I think I saw this on Knicks Film School and maybe from Tommy Beer, was that both Luka Doncic and Tim Hardaway Jr. scored more points individually than the Knicks did as a team in that third quarter. And so that's a recipe for failure. But I don't know, were you guys as disheartened by this Dallas loss as much of Knicks Twitter and Knicks fan base seemed to be?
I'll jump on that and say maybe, although like I I think Tibbs said it after a game earlier this year that like one game doesn't mean that much to me, but like at the same time, this game I actually shut off. Like I was watching for most of the game, and then during that third quarter, as you mentioned, things kind of got out of hand. Julius Randle usually loves playing against Dallas because he's from the area. He had 21 points in the first half, and then I think he ended with 24, so only 3 in that second half. Happened to the Knicks generally as it just stopped scoring. But like in that third quarter, like all of a sudden, Tim Hardaway Jr. just started making every three and just started pulling up making ridiculous threes. And at the same time, the Knicks, whose strong point is not shooting the three, I think, at least last week or 2 weeks ago, they were the one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the league. Probably still the case. But they were trying to do the same thing. Like they just kept on pulling from three. They would miss. The Mavericks would get the rebound, go down and hit a three. And that's how you win a quarter or 41-15 is you just make a bunch of threes while the other team misses a bunch of threes.
Yeah, I watched just real quick, Greg, on this third quarter. It started with a bunch of Spain pick and rolls. The Mavericks ran the same play 3 times in a row for basically for Tim Hardaway Jr. to spring for threes. And the Knicks, this is a play that the Knicks run all the time themselves. They run it out of timeouts. They did it today in the second quarter. And they somehow don't know how to defend this yet. It's very frustrating. Typically, like Tim Hardaway Jr. was setting a back screen on the big man, and then he pops out for 3. And it was just leading to a lot of wide open shots. It's tough because typically the 2 guards involved in the actions would usually switch that. But the thing was that the Knicks didn't want Brunson on Luka Doncic. They did not want that. They felt like that was a mismatch. Whenever that happened, they would send a hard double to Luka, and Luka just picks apart double teams. Like you can't run the same defensive scheme against Luka every time because he'll just be several steps ahead of you. And yeah, multiple times we saw Grimes just take a couple steps towards Luka like he was going to double team him. And Luka saw it coming a mile away, would throw one pass for a wide open 3, either for THJ or for Dorian Finney-Smith. Maxi Kleber hit one. Like that third quarter was brutal from a defensive execution standpoint, a scheme standpoint. Like everything about it fell apart. And I think that's why Knicks fans were so frustrated.
Yeah, I think that's right. When you go from winning by 7 points at halftime to losing by 19 points after 1 quarter of play. It's quite the swing. And Tom, have you considered that the reason the Knicks run the Spain pick and roll is because it's unguardable?
To them.
Therefore, that's why they can't guard
it. It got the Knicks a good look today. RJ missed the 3. I clipped it and put it on my Twitter. RJ had a decent look, but he had Julius Randle just wide open in the corner. Julius was upset and didn't get back on defense, and Cleveland went ahead and scored a layup in transition. So the Spain pick and roll doesn't always work, but it did against the Knicks on Saturday. But yeah, like there was just after that Mavericks game, there was a lot of buzz that was like Tom Thibodeau needs to be fired. And also buzz saying like there are signs that whether it's a coaching change or there's something is going to happen if things don't turn around. That's obviously a huge qualifier. If things don't turn around, like that's
if things don't improve from some of the worst basketball we've seen ever, something could change.
Yeah, like what were the odds that things didn't improve from that third quarter? Like that's as bad as we've ever seen the team play. So, but even so, there was still some reporting around that and some chatter on the interwebs, as there always tends to be. But I don't know. I know, Kenny, you seem to be like the most pro Tibbs person in my life. I think that's probably.
I think that's fair to say.
I'm actually not sure where Greg stands on Tom Thibodeau as the head coach of this team. Like, Greg, were you getting? I guess I have 2 questions. Like, A, do you want Tibbs fired? And B, would you be upset if he were fired?
Greg, you're muted, but so I'll let you.
I
All
don't,
right.
I don't, I don't need him to be fired. I have no real problem with the guy. I mean, he annoys me sometimes with his rotations and his commitment to putting in Julius Randle and with 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter, no matter what is happening in the actual flow of the game. Stuff of like that, I'm not a big fan of. But the Knicks' record this year, I think they are 7-1 against teams below 500, and then now 4-12 against teams above 500. So they're not losing to bad teams; they're just losing to teams that are often better than them. And part of that is the Knicks just sometimes just put up duds. There's, kind of too many cooks in the kitchen with trying to figure out who's going to be the main ball guy with Randall, Barrett, and Brunson all going in the same unit. Well, there's not a lot of cohesion, but a lot of the time, Kenny will always say this. Some of the stuff these players do is just like, what do you want the coach to do? Like Julius Randle, we know what he is. He's a great power forward, a good power forward, and every first quarter he just comes out and jacks up a bunch of jump shots, regardless of if they're in the flow of the offense or not. Which is just like maybe Tibbs can tell him not to do that, but I don't know. I don't know if it's going to work. He knows that he shouldn't be doing that because then the next 3 quarters he just doesn't do that anymore. So I don't know. If he does get fired, I also don't know how much I would care, but I don't see a better replacement mid-season, or I don't have one off the top of my head who I would want either.
Yeah, that's my whole main thing is that as much as people don't like what Tibbs is doing, like I feel like the vast majority of his decisions are defensible. Like you can understand why he is making those decisions, which hasn't always been the case with Knicks coaches. And that's what worries me is like, who are you going to replace him with? Like the Knicks, David Fizdale was an unmitigated disaster.
No, I think the common response that you'd get, I think, is Johnny Bryant, who's in house. You wouldn't go out, you wouldn't go find someone externally mid-season. But I think Johnny Bryant as the interim head coach and potentially, based on how that goes, hired full-time next season is probably how a lot of fans kind of envision that. I don't have a great deal of insight into Johnny Bryant's head coaching,
and
abilities.
that's my whole thing is like, I don't know anything about whether Johnny, if he can coach or not. Like, and I think that Tibbs has done what you would expect from this team. And like Greg said, they're very good against teams below 500. They're not very good against teams above 500. And that's what this team was expected to be. And I just don't see how you fire a coach when your team is performing as expected. Like, we expected them to be right around 500, and like that's what it means when you beat all the teams you play that are below 500 and you lose to the teams above 500. That's usually what that means. So I just like, number one, I don't know who they replace him with. Number two, his decisions seem defensible. Number three, to Greg's point, like there are things that the team does that like he has no control over. He has no control over the fact that RJ Barrett can't shoot right now. He has no control over the fact that, Grimes was injured and now he can't shoot. Like, he has no control over those things. And I put out a tweet earlier today that, like, I think outside of Jalen Brunson, every player on the Knicks has gone through a stretch this year where they were just playing bad basketball or they were injured. And so, like, that's stuff that the coach can't control. And they're still right where you expect them to be based on the teams that they have played. So, like, again, I don't know how you get rid of a coach for doing what you would expect this team to do. I don't think it's his fault that this isn't a great team. I think the talent just isn't there. And I think the front office knows that. And they have been, stockpiling assets in order to make a trade to bring someone in to get them to that next level. So like, I think the front office knows that they're not there yet. And I don't think that they're actually expecting to be, a top level team right now.
Yeah, I think that, one thing on the RJ Barrett front, like correct, Tibbs can't control that he's really playing poorly right now on both ends of the floor. On the whole, there's been some outlier games where he's played quite well, but overall, it's been a pretty unmitigated. I mean, you talk about David Fizdale, unmitigated disaster. The thing is that RJ Barrett shouldn't be leading the team in minutes so often. Like, you could cut back his time on the court, especially that stretch when he was sick. We were told he was sick. We have no reason to not believe that, but he was still getting a ton of minutes. And I think that one thing that Tom Thibodeau did in this game against Cleveland today, and I'm going to circle back to the larger discussion on Tibbs in a minute, but one thing that happened in this Cleveland game that I thought was really notable was that Cam Reddish was removed from the rotation entirely. I feel like it's an interesting decision, and it ended up, they won this game, and they won this game. I think it was mainly because of their defense. They only allowed, was it 81 points? Part of that is because, Deuce McBride was the first guard off the bench. That was instead of Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose was also removed from the rotation today. And that perimeter defense of Deuce, and when IQ came in and Grimes playing all his minutes, like, that is a really tough perimeter defense. And I don't know that I'm confused about Cam Reddish's removal, frankly, because I think he could still add a lot of value. He brings stuff to this team that other guys that they don't have. RJ really struggled in that first half. I think he was 1 of 8 from the field. He had 5 turnovers, and he still led the team in minutes in that first half. And so I just think, something like that's a little baffling to me, where Cam Reddish should be removed when he did have a bad game. Cam had a bad game against Dallas, but a lot of other guys have had bad games, and they still keep getting time.
Again, like, I don't disagree that, maybe RJ isn't the person, like, to be playing all of those minutes, but I can understand the thinking that you just paid this guy his rookie extension, and, like, he's been, a slow start of the last few years, and your hope is that he finds his way out of his slump and becomes a productive player. So, like, I can see the reasoning behind giving him these minutes and hope, and, like, because I don't think you're going to bench RJ Barrett at this point. So, like, I can see the thinking behind it.
And I'm not saying bench him. I'm just saying don't play him the most minutes.
Yeah. No, and I agree with that, but at the same time, like, that's what he's used to, and so I could see the argument behind giving him the minutes that he is used to, and hoping that he gets out of this slump. So, like I said, there's nothing he does that I'm like, that makes no sense at all. Like, I can't see a reason for doing that. Like, there's things that I disagree with. Like you said, I think he should probably be cutting down on his minutes a little bit right now until he figures stuff out. But, like, I can at least see the argument for what he's doing. Whereas, like, Fizdale, Hornacek, like, the guys who have come before, there was a lot of questions about, like, how they handled the team.
Yeah, and just closing the loop on this Cavs game, Jalen Brunson led the team with 23 points. I don't know. It was a really weird game, guys. Like, it was a bizarre one to watch. Their travels were called like every few minutes.
Most of the season for any game played.
It was wildly it was unfun to watch, but it was also just like it ruined any flow. The players couldn't find any rhythm. It seemed like the offense was the final score says it all. It was 92 points won it. The Knicks had 20 turnovers. I'd imagine that's towards the most that they had this season. I don't even think the Knicks played particularly well, but they still came away with a win here. I was just kind of a weird one. Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, they just did what they had to do. Like you said, the refs were calling travels. And down that stretch, there was a couple of lifesaver travels that got called on the Cavs. The Knicks had spread it out. The second unit really kind of carried the plus minus today, at the least. And, they got it up to like 13 at some point in that fourth quarter. And that was when Tibbs decided, like, okay, time for the starters to go back in. And he staggered them. It was Mitchell Robinson, then it was Julius Randle, and then finally RJ Barrett came in with like 3 minutes left. But the lead very, very quickly when Randle checked in went from 13 to 6, which was a bit scary. But then Kevin Love was going to shoot a 3 to try to cut it to 3 and just got called for a travel for whatever reason, just for fun, seemingly, by the refs. And that was a lifesaver. And
didn't really look
then,
like a travel, but that's fine. There were a lot of those today. So, yeah, hopefully, I know that the league's emphasizing travels and all that. They say it like every game, but this one was like overemphasized to a degree that was just almost not basketball anymore.
And it's not the travels that people complain about. Like the travels that people complain about is people taking like 4 steps on the way to the basket. The travels they were calling is like the first step travel, which like I don't think is what people get mad about when they watch people travel in the NBA, and like it was just not fun to watch.
Yeah, Breen made the point of whether the travels actually led to advantages for the offensive player, and it seemed like a lot of times they had nothing to do with the game play, like at all. So, yeah, and hopefully we never see that crew again. We should make mental note of that.
And just going along with what you were saying, Tom, I don't know if it like affected the players' kind of mentality or anything, but like there were a lot of turnovers from both sides that were just like turnovers you don't see, like people just passing it to the other team, and like from both sides, passing it out of bounds, passing it to the other team, just like losing the ball. Like it was not like what you're typically used to watching in an NBA basketball game. It was just a lot of carelessness or something going on, and I'm wondering if it was the travels that like led to people being a little hesitant or a little tentative to be a little more aggressive and assertive.
Right, and it led to a lot of, I mean, the number of missed threes. The Cavs shot just under 23% from 3, and they were the better 3-point shooting team. The Knicks shot 17% from behind the arc, 5 of 29. I mean, it was, like I said, that was an ugly game to watch. It was nice to see them pull one out with defense. And, kind of circling back to the Tibbs conversation a bit, the Knicks defense has been really bad this year. Coming into this game, I believe they're the 27th ranked defense in the league. After this game, it was such a good defensive game. They're now 24th in the league. This is according to Cleaning the Glass. They give up just under 115 points per 100 possessions. That's 24th in the league. And that's pretty bizarre. This is a Knicks offense that is 16th. So basically league average in offense, but they've been really bad in defense. And it's not really what you associate with the Tom Thibodeau coach team. 2 years ago for the We Here season, they were a top 5 defense. Last year, I know they were in the top half of the league. I can pull up real quick kind of where they were, but the fact that they're 24th is pretty alarming, I think, especially since we're already a quarter of the way through the season. So yeah, last year the Knicks were the 12th ranked defense, all the way down to 24th this year. So Kenny, you being the staunchest Tibbs supporter, does the 24th ranked defense cause any like alarm bells to go off for you?
Like we've talked about this previously, and like I have to feel like that number is going to go down, although like the further we get into the season, the harder it is to say that. But like there's I believe that's probably why we saw the kind of Derrick Rose benching in favor of Cam Reddish. I mean, that would be the only reason that you'd expect it to happen. But like, I don't know, and it's so hard to kind of blame the system for the shots that other people are getting. I think the Knicks give up by far the most wide open threes, and I can't imagine that's a part of Tibbs' system, although I guess historically they have tried to pick the shooters who get those shots and have given them up. But like I just don't I feel like over time that number is going to come down, just based on it's not that different of a team than they had even just last year when they were much better on the defensive end, although potentially the pushing the pace might take away some of the energy on the defensive end.
Well, that's what I was going to say is like, this isn't that different of a team that even finished top 5 in defense. Like, I mean, a lot of the core is still there, right? It's just, it's very strange that with the personnel not turning over like so much, and even some of the like worst defensive players, right? Like Kemba Walker, his numbers are a part of last season's bigger picture. He was terrible on defense. Evan Fournier also terrible on defense. And those guys, I mean, granted, Fournier had some minutes, several games in this season as well, but like, the defense hasn't been better with Fournier out, which is concerning as well. So I don't know. The scheme is, as we know, it's like drop, pick and roll coverage. There are definitely, some holes in it, and it requires the team to like really play on a string, to make their rotations, to hustle a lot, and to like make second efforts. And that's kind of the biggest thing I see. Like Julius Randle, you could probably count on one hand the number of second efforts he's made this season. Like when he makes one rotation to the paint, he doesn't leave the paint. He will not run back out to the perimeter after he makes one rotation. And it's been a huge issue for this team, because he gets a lot of minutes, and defenses know to just kind of like, attack RJ, attack Julius. They've been our two worst defenders all season, and they're our two highest usage players. So, and highest minutes per game players, I should say. So yeah, I don't know if that's an effort thing or a buy-in thing or scheme, but it's definitely, I know, the further we get into the season, like the less we can kind of count on the small sample size stuff.
Yeah. Hopefully it gets better. With like Kenny was saying, a lot of time their transition defense has just been awful. Even off of made baskets, sometimes you'll see the other team just get a fast break. And Clyde is a big hater of that and says, that should never happen, which is true. But I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me to say that's the reason why the entire defense has gone wrong. But it's a contributor, I assume.
Oh, it is. No, their transition defense has been among the worst in the league, but today it was really good. Like Deuce McBride getting back in transition, like him being kind of the guy who's back there, that made a huge difference. Derrick Rose has been god awful on that end. Like he really hasn't, kind of lent any resistance in transition. When Julius Randle's back there, when RJ's back there, there's just nothing. Like it's basically like no one's back there. But Deuce back there, Grimes back there, they make a huge difference. And so today the transition defense was really strong, I noticed. So yeah, it'll be curious to see if Deuce actually gets more regular minutes going forward, because earlier this week he was in the G League.
Yeah, it's funny because he was just like a dominant force in the G League. He scored like 25, and then you move up to the big leagues and he had 0 points on 0 for 4 shooting today. It's really pretty wild, the difference between the G League and the NBA. But
yeah, and Greg, I just pulled up the number real quick. The Knicks rank 25th in like additional points per possession in transition. So they're the 25th ranked transition defense.
And they were the 24th overall defense?
Correct.
Yeah, so that's dragging us down.
It ain't helping.
Yeah, I mean, going back to your rotation, talking about is Derrick Rose out of the rotation officially, and so I was thinking today, like maybe Cam and Rose were out because it was a back-to-back, but earlier this week we had a back-to-back and they both played in both games. So that
one other thing I was thinking about is potentially just the matchups with Donovan Mitchell and Garland. They might have preferred to go with Deuce over Rose. I have no excuse for the Cam Reddish thing, other than he is coming off injury, and there were several back-to-backs, so maybe there's something there, but I don't know.
Yeah, man, because RJ Barrett got a lot of minutes on Darius Garland, and frankly, Darius Garland was really bad tonight, and so I don't think that was because RJ was on him all that much. Like there was one play early on where RJ was just a turnstile and Garland got right by him, but Darius couldn't hit anything. He was 5 of 19 from the field, 3 assists to 4 turnovers. I think he was a team worst -17 while he was on the floor. He looked terrible tonight. So it worked, I guess. Like the result was there, but like Cam Reddish would be able to defend Darius Garland much better than RJ Barrett could. But I know RJ has to play. That's not what I'm saying. It's just like Cam Reddish could have probably added some value there as well. But that's a really tough backcourt. And Garland and Mitchell combined for 13 for 41 from the field. So including 5 of 20 from 3. So it was the right night to catch Cleveland.
I think we got to wait and see what happens with the rotations on Wednesday, and then decide if Cam and Rose are really out of it. But like you were saying, great night to catch Cleveland. They were missing Jared Allen and Karis LeVert, which
Karis LeVert played, right?
He did. I don't know.
Well, just 16 minutes though. I don't know if he got hurt or something.
I mean, I didn't. I personally was on a train until the fourth quarter, so he didn't play in my eyes.
Yeah, that is weird that he only played 16 minutes though.
Yeah, but Jared Allen wasn't there, so that was part of it.
One guy on that Cavs team who I know we talked about a good amount as a potential draft pick was Isaac Okoro, and he looks really bad. He looks like he completely forgot how to play offense.
He was never thought of as an offensive guy. He came in as like you were hoping he was going to be a defender.
He just does a bunch of nothing out there.
Yeah, I honestly I remember hearing his name like twice, and then I didn't think about him the entire rest of the game.
I mean, he does sound like one of our draft picks based on that description of it.
So like that, now that I'm thinking about it, the only time I remember hearing his name was when he got boxed out and IQ got a rebound over him, which is just like, I don't know. I mean, IQ is a very good rebounder for his size, but like I feel like that's something Okoro should have handled. But again, that's the only time I remember hearing his name tonight.
Yeah, so bullet dodged there with Okoro, but all right, let's see. We can do a little bit more big picture talk, I think. And Greg, I'm with you. We'll check in with Cam Reddish next week because he's the one I actually care about. Like Derrick Rose being out of the rotation, fine by me. But Cam Reddish, I'm very curious to see where Tibbs goes with him.
He was closing out a lot of games too, not just playing minutes. Even like his first game back, I think he closed it out. So I don't think he's done. They played Grimes for 40 minutes tonight, which clearly they have a lot of faith in him, even though he only scored 4 points when his offense doesn't work, and they trust that he'll play defense. But Cam was making plays on defense too, so I don't know if those guys are mutually exclusive from each other in Thibodeau's eyes, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, Kenny, you mentioned earlier the front office, and so I just kind of want to take a step back here now that we're over a quarter of the way through the season and just kind of talk about like where we expect this team to kind of go from here, whether there's going to be any like mid-season trades on the horizon or just like what can Knicks fans actually like look forward to, whether it's this season or down the road, because it seems like this front office's goal is to acquire a star via a trade. That's kind of plans A, B, and C, right? That's if that doesn't work, we're kind of up the river. But I don't know who like a star we should be targeting is. Like I don't want Karl Anthony Towns. I've heard talk of like Zach LaVine. These aren't like super winning players that I've heard like thrown around out there. So I don't know. Kenny, where are you at with this front office, like in terms of how they've, I mean, just big picture stuff. Like, do you like where the Knicks are right now? And do you think that like, are we stuck in purgatory, or is there something we can look forward to?
Not going to be a popular answer, but I feel like we're going to be stuck in purgatory for a while. I think right now the issue is that like you said, their entire plan is to wait for a star to be available, and like that doesn't happen every day. So until that happens, they're going to continue to kick the can down the road. And like right now, they have like one of their bigger problems is they have a lot of players who are like actual NBA players, but they have no, star player to take them to the next level. And that creates all of this minute crunch, and you're losing value on players by not playing them as much as you could be. And I don't know if there's anyone on the roster that of the young guys who you would expect to develop into something more than that. I don't know if where their draft picks fall, you would expect to draft someone who could become a star in a few years. Like either way, it's going to be a long time. They have projected to have 3 pretty solid picks in this upcoming draft. We'll see whether that turns into a player. If not, again, I would expect them to punt, just because they have a lot of players under contract, and so maybe they take one of those 3 picks and turn it into a player, and then the other ones I would expect them to turn them into future first, just like they have the last few years to try to get some more value to have in their back pocket in order to have a trade. Because like we've talked about before during draft pods, like a draft pick could be anything. Once you make that pick, it's a lot less useful because only the people who want the player that you have are in it, whereas anyone who wants someone from the drafts could be in on a draft pick. So like I expect that to be the plan, and I expect the Knicks to continue to be, this season at least, this middle of the road team that we've seen, and the front office, I have to imagine, is expecting that, and they are just waiting for their opportunity to use some of the pieces that they have put together to take the team to the next level. Although like the thing that you don't want to see them doing is them throwing all of their pieces and gutting the roster in order to get someone like they've done in the past, which has also been disastrous. So I'm okay with the patient approach. I don't know that the rest of the Knicks fan base will be, because you already see a lot of impatience from people.
I mean, going off of that, you say that a star player doesn't come around available all the time, which is very true. But this past summer, the guy we just played, Donovan Mitchell, was available, and we all thought he was as good as on the Knicks, but the Knicks were willing to not trade for him because they thought the ask was too much, and also I feel like they didn't think he makes them a championship contender. So that's the real, like, the difference between a star player becoming available and like Anthony Davis becoming available. Not current Anthony Davis, but like when he was on the Pelicans. So something like that. And how much are the Knicks even willing to pay? I don't know that they're willing to make this big splash until they think that it's the move that will get them over the hump and into the conversation. Like the Cavaliers thought they were actually good enough for Donovan Mitchell to become like the guy on a top 4 team in the East. So
yeah, I mean the Cavs have a really strong young core with those 4 guys. But I mean, who knows where that'll actually take them in the East? But like, yeah, the question for the Knicks would be like, would they actually have enough after giving up one trade package for a star? Would they have enough left over to trade for a second star? That seems to be like the only kind of option at this point. I guess my biggest thing is I still feel like I know on draft night we were kind of praising the Knicks for flipping that 1 draft pick into 3 future firsts. But the more I've thought about it, like kind of the lower I've been on that move, or just at least that philosophy, just because I really believe that this team needs to take more swings at talent. Like we say, oh, there's a lot of NBA players on this roster, and that's true, but there's not a lot of high upside guys who could like pop and be like very good starters. Like Obi is kind of who I'm thinking of here, where we spent the 8th draft pick on him, and we have not really, I mean, as far as development goes, he's developed into a 3, not 3 and D, just straight up 3s and kind of transitions and lobs sometimes, but mostly 3s. And Greg, it reminds me of your criticism of Oklahoma City way back when they turned Sabonis into a 3-point shooter. I'm not saying that Obi Toppin is as skilled as Sabonis is, but it's a similar type of archetype where like you need, like Obi Toppin should be not jacking up 3s all the time. And that's kind of been his only role. That's the 8th overall pick. There were a lot of guys on the board that we liked back then. In the moment, we liked Halliburton. We liked Maxey a lot. It's just, it's super frustrating But I guess my point to all that is that like those 3 picks that they acquired, if that's only going to be used for a trade or like to kick the can further down the road and to flip them for more picks, I want to see them try and draft somebody that they think has potential. Like I know Jalen Williams is a guy who was drafted shortly after the Knicks traded down in this past draft, and Oklahoma City got him, and he's looking like a legit player. I'm not saying he's gonna be like a future all-star, but he looks like a real piece on a very good team. And I want to see them like take a young guy, take a chance, and actually like put their chips in on a young player that they believe in.
Again, like I think the problem is, and like it was the same problem with Obi, is like where is that person going to find minutes? And like they're stacking up all of these pieces in order to trade them, and in order to have these pieces, you need to have like all of these players. So like I just don't know. Obi couldn't break into the rotation to get the development minutes that he needed. And I think
that's an organizational problem, though. That's like a real problem.
But I mean, no matter who you drafted, there was someone at every position for the Knicks this year. So like, if they traded other people off and made room for them, like that's one thing. But like, I just don't. There's just not any place for any player to.
But you do that though. You do trade their Derrick Roses and like the veterans. Like you make room for these guys if you believe that they can be a part of your future, whereas some of these veterans can't be. I guess my only issue though is that like we say we're going to package these assets, but there's no real evidence that like those picks are considered very valuable. Like Utah didn't want them. Utah didn't care about those protected picks at all in the Donovan Mitchell talks. They wanted the Knicks' own unprotected picks because they don't trust New York as an organization to like be competent going forward. But there was no reporting or anything that the Knicks that the Jazz cared at all about those protected picks. I think they just overvalued them.
And the one thing I'll say is that a lot of this comes back to, do you want Tom Thibodeau to be the coach of the Knicks? Because I mean, if they drafted a young guy, then not that there's not minutes to be there. There's plenty of minutes for Obi to play, but Thibodeau has to play Randall 38 minutes every game. So that's just on the coach. He doesn't really have the philosophy of playing rookies too often. So, like you said, it's an organizational problem, but that's largely the coach. I don't know if we drafted Jalen Duren, who was the person that we drafted with that pick. Obviously, I don't think we would have picked him since he doesn't really fit. That's just a person who there's no spot for him on the team with Tom Thibodeau coach. And they have 3 centers. They're not getting Jericho Sims minutes right now. And they have Randall and Obi, who are the only 2 people allowed to play power forward on the team.
And I would say that it's more a front office problem than a Tibbs problem, because like if he brought Jalen Duren in, like I don't know who the coach is, but I don't see minutes for Jalen Duren on this team anywhere. Like,
but you wouldn't have brought in Hartenstein. Like if Duren were actually like part of your plan, then I mean, do you even pay Mitchell Robinson $60 million, or like do you bring in Hartenstein as your starting center and bring in Duren as your backup? They also brought in Sim. Like, you know, these decisions wouldn't be made in silos. They'd be made kind of as a part of a greater whole, I think. And you definitely wouldn't have 3 centers on your roster and bring in Duren. But
I mean, I still go back to the point that I would rather have those 3 picks than whatever you were going to get at that pick right there.
As trade assets, or actually because you're not going to pick play. I think that they're overrated as trade assets, and I don't think that they're going to use them all to pick players because they don't have room for them all. We're saying they don't even have room for 1, let alone 3.
I don't think one conversation with the Utah Jazz, when like a lot of people said that Danny Ainge was mad that the Knicks showed up at one of their playoff games and wasn't negotiating in good faith, is a good gauge of the value of those assets. So,
but do we see like protected picks get moved? Like,
I mean, we just got Cam
Timberwolves. The Timberwolves
got Cam Reddish for the top 18 protected pick or whatever. So
that's like, fine, but like Cam Reddish he might be out of our rotation. Like I'm saying, like for a star, Kenny, I'm talking about for a star, like Rudy Gobert got moved for a bunch of unprotected Minnesota picks. Like it wasn't, I don't know, like just look at the track record for actual stars, and you're not going to see a bunch of like heavily protected picks moving, because I don't think that they're super valuable.
Again, I don't think those picks are as heavily protected as as people portrayed them at the time that we got them. A lot of people said that like they probably weren't going to convey, which I just don't think is the case. So like,
but
I
even
think
if they do convey, it's not. I'm saying like unprotected picks.
so
is
they're
the
not
valuable
going to be
currency.
lottery picks. They're not going to be lottery picks. But like, if you're like, they're not valueless. I don't think they're as low as you think based on the Utah Jazz, not wanted. Well, and even that there were some of them involved in those conversations. So like, they're not nothing.
But not enough to like move the needle, I guess is my point.
But the Knicks also have their own picks, so it's like they're not nothing is what it comes down to. Because like, if the Knicks want to trade their own picks and then also add these, like, would you rather have the Knicks unprotected pick or the Knicks unprotected pick plus 3 protected draft picks from other teams?
But they're not if they're not going to use them, and if
But
they're not,
that so you're talking about value, and I'm saying like, you're saying that they're under, like, which would you rather have?
I'd rather the Knicks pick a player that I think is going to be very good,
But
and
would
then
you
play
rather
them and
have-
develop them on the roster.
But you're telling me that they're not valuable, but they are. Like,
And he's just saying that they're not going to be the headline in
they're
a
not.
Donovan Mitchell trade.
No one's saying that they are, but like, having 3 unprotected picks is not. It's something, and I think it's more valuable than you seem to think.
It's
You
fine.
definitely do. We can agree on that. All right, we can move on though. I don't know. We've been going for a while though. Is there anything else you guys want to say about this team? I guess we can go on to next week if we're done on this sort of the big picture stuff.
It works for me.
All right. So in the upcoming week, we have got the Atlanta Hawks. So we've got a few days off here. We've got the Atlanta Hawks at home on Wednesday, Charlotte Hornets at Charlotte on Friday, and then another 6 p.m. Sunday game at home against the Kings, who've been pretty good this year. They're currently 12-9, 5th in the Western Conference, as we're recording. So just 3 games. I think we predicted last week correctly, 2-2. We don't have the 500 kind of crutch to lean on here, though. We got to go one way or the other. Atlanta having a little bit of controversy now with Trae Young. It seems like he's kind of disappointed as the head figure in that franchise. I could see the Knicks winning at home against it. I mean, I could see the Knicks going 2-1 this week for real, like beating Atlanta, going to Charlotte, beating the Hornets, and then probably losing at home to the Kings. I think the Kings are pretty good right now. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? 2-1?
That sounds good to me. I like it. Yeah. I'm not going to lock in who's going to be the 2 wins because I mean, I think we'll agree that the Kings is a possible W, but they have been pretty good. But we just beat the Cavs, who've also been pretty good. And the Knicks have shown that they are capable of beating good teams. Well, they are only 4-12 against them, but those 4 wins are more than 0.
And the Hawks are 13-10 right now. So it's not like that's not a gimme or anything. But the Knicks do have a few days to kind of rest up and prepare for it. And they got a little positive momentum coming from this Cleveland game. So the optimistic take is they beat Atlanta. The pessimistic take is that they go 1-2 and lose to Atlanta. So I think that's kind of the swing game is the first game of the week.
I think the optimistic take is 3-0, but I'll go with you guys. I think 2-1 is the reasonable optimistic take. Although, like, I don't think 3-0 is out of the question. And I think actually for the next roughly month, this seems like the most reasonable part of the Knicks schedule. Like, there's some top end teams there, but like there's a lot of middle of the road and pretty bad teams over the next month. So I think this is the Knicks' chance to kind of capitalize that and improve their record.
All right, so 2-1, we're in agreement. We can move quickly to our favorite sub podcast, and that's What Else Is On. Greg, what else you been watching?
What else have I been watching? It's a good question. I've been watching Atlanta a a little bit. So the first 2 seasons were fun. The third season, they do a lot of episodes that are just like
You just switched to mute for some reason.
I pressed the space bar. I guess I mute it. And I did the third season they do a bunch of stories that like are one-offs, unrelated to the story, and sometimes like the characters aren't even in it, like Donald Glover isn't even in these episodes, and they are weird. So first 2 seasons were great though. There's one season left that I got to watch, but that's where I'm at. So what
So
else is on
do you
here?
recommend it?
I recommend watching the first 2 seasons.
Yeah, people love the first two.
You can watch the third one and be like, "Wow, that's what Greg was talking about." That's why you should watch it. Plus, I watching The White Lotus because you and Jake bullied me into watching the last episode, which apparently you guys were joking.
No, I like that. I honestly think the last episode of White Lotus was the best one they've had this season.
Yeah, no, it was good, but I remember you guys were like, "It's still got such a good ending."
Yeah,
And that part was
it was pretty wild. I didn't see it coming. I'll say that much. But no spoilers here. I'm excited for the next episode to drop tonight as we're recording this. I'll probably watch it later in the week, but I don't know. There's only 2 more episodes left of this season, so some dramatic stuff's probably going to happen. Kenny, what else is on for you?
So along with all the sports I watched yesterday, I did spend most of this my TV watching time this week watching 1899, which Greg talked about last week. I was a big fan of Dark. I was also a big fan of 1899. Although I think talking to Greg, I don't think he was as psyched about the ending as I was okay with it and excited to see where things go. And that's I think you weren't a big Dark fan, Tom, but if you have watched Dark and you were a fan of it, I'd highly recommend 1899. If you haven't watched Dark, but you like it, the way that I always used to describe Dark to people was it's like a better, darker version of Stranger Things. It's very complex, so like it's something you really have to actually focus on when you watch it. So if that sounds good to you, I would watch both Dark and 1899. But that was my week in watching. What about you, Tom?
I mentioned we got a little bit into like Christmas mode this weekend, put up the tree and all that stuff. And so Rose and I, we have some like holiday movie blind spots that we're trying to remedy. One, neither of us had ever seen National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and for some people that's like very offensive. Like they grew up with that, and that's what they watched every year. My sister-in-law, Dave's wife Tara, their family is obsessed with that movie. We both watched it, and it was good. It was actually very funny. It held up, and I did not realize that Julia Louis-Dreyfus played such a big role in that. I didn't know Elaine from Seinfeld was in that movie, so that was a pleasant surprise. Funny movie. I recommend it. We're probably gonna be on like a little Christmas movie kick these next few weeks. So, again, a few more blind spots to Die Hard. I haven't seen Die Hard. That's another one that people kind of freak out about. So maybe that's what I'll be talking about next weekend.
I haven't seen either of those movies, so
I've seen Die Hard, and I think that's a very controversial one in terms of the Christmas movie lexicon. So maybe you can watch it and tell us what you think, Tom. I never really thought of it as a Christmas movie, although I see the argument, I guess, but it's I wouldn't go that far.
It's easy just to go back to the old standbys. Like Home Alone is just such a classic that
and it's everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, last year we watched It's a Wonderful Life for the first time. Neither of us had watched that in its entirety.
See, that's more offensive to me than not seeing National Lampoon.
I hadn't seen that movie either.
See, but we checked it off the list though, so it seems like Greg has got even more.
Yeah,
than I
That's
do.
because I've been checking off my list for years, not dedicated to Christmas movies. Like, The Sixth Sense, Donnie Darko, Taxi Driver, Leon the Professional. I've just slowly been chipping away at those over the last, couple of years. Some of them are good, some of them are not good.
We gotta get more of those film reviews.
Yeah, I want to be part of the discussion of renowned film to tell you that Taxi Driver is like a whatever film. I need to watch that.
Yeah,
Casablanca is good though.
I like that too. I like Casablanca too. All right. Well, good stuff, guys. I think that's plenty of what else is on. If you're still listening, we appreciate you. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, follow on Spotify, subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Like I mentioned at the top, we're on YouTube. Definitely subscribe to us there. You can follow us on Twitter at Talkin Knicks, Instagram at Talkin Knicks. We're posting a bunch of content. We are here. We appreciate you listening, and we will catch you next week. Until then, let's go Knicks.
Mixtape.